I got fired 3 days after saving my company from a cyber attack that could have bankrupted us in an hour. No thank you. No bonus. Just a cold conference room, HR papers, and a smile from the same boss who once called me indispensable. I walked out, erased my badge from the system, and quietly left one thing behind. A line of code. Not a virus, not a threat, just a mirror. And when that mirror cracked, the whole company fell with it. The blood had dried by the time I found the bandages. My daughter sat quietly on the kitchen counter, her scraped knee trembling as I cleaned the wound. "It doesn't hurt," she whispered, but her fingers clung to my arm. I hadn't been there when she fell. I'd been at the office, again, finishing a patch that no one would ever see, but everyone would benefit from. 12 years of this. 12 years of keeping the lights on while the credits went elsewhere. Her small voice broke the silence. "Do superheroes cry, Dad?" I didn't answer. That night, as I tucked her into bed, my phone vibrated. I stared at the subject line. "Urgent. Come to 17th floor. Now." No signature, just that. The elevator hummed up through steel and glass. My reflection fractured in a dozen panels. When the doors opened, the lights in the hallway were dimmed. Unusual for 9 p.m. I stepped into the ops room and saw them. 3 monitors flashing red. Code lines spinning too fast to read. A security breach. "It's hitting core finance," one junior tech said. "They're bypassing the encryption." I didn't waste time. 14 minutes later, I had traced the intrusion, rerouted the attack, and neutralized the code injection. Applause would have been inappropriate, because what I found next made my hands go cold. The breach didn't come from outside. It originated from a script embedded in last week's code update, a script marked as Ops Persistence set23.x and signed internally. Someone inside had planted a backdoor. I froze. Reporting it would mean implicating the deployment team, maybe even our CTO. It would mean weeks of investigation, bad press, maybe the IPO getting delayed. Careers would crumble, including mine. Or I could quietly patch the breach, log the event under miscellaneous traffic anomaly, and bury it. So I did neither. I took a screenshot. I copied the script. And I hid it where no one would find it. Yet. The next morning, I arrived early, just in time to see my name omitted from the incident report. The security update had already been sent company-wide, with someone else's initials stamped at the bottom. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then came the meetings, ones I was accidentally left out of. My access to key systems got quietly revoked. Emails from team leads stopped including me. And Marcus, my manager of 8 years, started calling me Ethan again instead of Ross. His way of distancing himself. I tried to talk to him. "I think there's been a miscommunication," I said. He smiled. "Don't worry about it. We're just shifting some responsibilities around. You'll have more time to breathe." I didn't respond. That weekend, I took Ava to the park. She chased pigeons while I sat on a bench, watching her run free. Then she came over and leaned on my leg. "Why do you always look sad?" she asked. I didn't know what to tell her. That people lie? That loyalty's a coin everyone spends? On Monday, I accessed the internal audit logs. My credentials still worked. Barely. That's when I saw it. A revised entry from the night of the breach, time-stamped 30 minutes after I left the office. The log blamed a misconfigured firewall script for the incident. And the author? Ethan Ross. My name. They'd rewritten the narrative. I was the scapegoat. I went to HR, requested a meeting. I brought my screenshots, my timeline, the logs. The director nodded, jotted notes, and said, "We'll review this thoroughly." By lunch, my badge stopped working at the turnstile. At 3 p.m., I got the invite. Emergency staff meeting, 4:30 p.m. All team leads required. My name was included. I knew. That room would be cold. There'd be a chair waiting, a printed resignation form. And Marcus, he'd be there too, wearing the same fake concern he wore at every quarterly review. I went home early that day. Ava was coloring on the floor. She looked up. "You're home?" "Yeah," I said. "I might be home a lot more." She smiled, as if that was the best news she'd ever heard. I didn't quit. They expected me to. Maybe they even needed me to. A voluntary exit would have kept everything neat and quiet. No questions asked. But I wasn't ready to walk away. Not when I knew the truth was being rewritten without me. The day after that emergency meeting I never attended, I received a calendar invite marked as one-on-one alignment. HR. The kind of meeting that comes with soft tones and sharp blades. The room was colder than I remembered. The HR director greeted me with the same practiced smile, slid a folder across the table, and tapped on a tablet. "We've received a report, Ethan. There's been a complaint, several actually, about conduct unbecoming of a team lead." My chest tightened. What kind of conduct? Without answering, she turned the tablet toward me. It played a video, blurry footage, poor lighting. My voice, at least it sounded like mine, ranting, mocking someone by name. It was cruel, personal, something I'd never say. "That's not me," I said immediately. Her face didn't change. "It confirmed the timestamp matches a recent team outing. We're giving you a chance to respond before escalating." "It's fake," I said. "That's a deep fake. I can prove it." But they didn't care about proof. They cared about optics. That evening, I told my wife everything. Showed her the footage. She watched it in silence. Then she whispered, "You said you'd never hide anything again." I stared at her. "You think it's real?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, I sat in my garage. Door open to the street, laptop glowing in the dark. I replayed the video 5 times. The mouth sync was off. The background was wrong. They'd used an old clip, layered audio, stitched frames, amateur deepfake, but good enough to ruin me. I thought of Ava's question at the park. "Why do you always look sad?" The system wasn't just protecting itself. It was eating people. People like me. People who were once loyal. The next morning, a message appeared in my inbox. No sender, no subject, just a single line. They did the same to me. "I have a way out." I paused. Then I replied, "Where?" The response came instantly. 7 p.m., Greenbridge Cafe, back patio. I arrived early, sat with my back to the wall. At 7:03, a man in a gray hoodie sat across from me. Mid-40s, worn hands, sharp eyes. "Name's Cole," he said. "You're not the first. You won't be the last." He told me his story. Senior developer, let go after he discovered hidden code redirecting client funds through a ghost subdomain. When he raised it, they blamed him for the breach, faked chat logs, revoked his access. By the time he found a lawyer, no one would take his case. He now worked for a rival firm, off the grid, white hat contracting. "I've been watching your case," he said. "They're using the same script." "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "But if you want justice, I can help you build the file, the real file, one they can't erase." Back home, I sat with Ava and opened my laptop. Want to see something cool? I asked. She grinned. I showed her 2 pictures, one real, one AI generated. She picked the fake in 2 seconds. You're good at this, I said. Are you making a game? Sort of, I smiled. A truth game. Later that night, I dug into the audit trails. Every commit log, access key, data transfer. Cole sent scripts that could trace phantom accounts, highlight obfuscated code paths. We weren't breaking anything. We were pulling up buried bones. I didn't know if this would fix anything. But at least I wasn't watching from the sidelines anymore. Midway through week 2, Cole messaged again. You're in deeper than I thought. Some of these IDs, they're not internal. They're layered, outsourced, might even be offshore. I asked, how far does this go? He replied, far enough that your life might get interesting. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. This was no longer about a job. It was a war for narrative. A moment later, another message popped up on my screen. From Cole. A question. Would you detonate a bomb, knowing you might be standing too close? The code I wrote was never meant to destroy. It was designed to reflect, to show the system what it really looked like. Naked, flawed, vulnerable. We called it Echo. Cole helped me craft it over nights, fueled by caffeine and a kind of righteous anger I hadn't felt in years. Echo didn't touch any data. It didn't delete files or reroute transactions. It simply fed false telemetry, numbers that looked real but weren't. Delays where there were none. Load spikes that didn't exist. Latency in systems that were actually idle. Within days, the system began to respond. IT started flagging phantom anomalies. Resource allocation got rebalanced. Departments began chasing emergent risks that didn't exist. They didn't know they were fighting shadows. And the more they patched, the deeper the confusion went. It was subtle, elegant, and it was working. One evening, while cross-checking access logs to make sure Echo hadn't been traced back to me, I saw a name I hadn't expected, Kenji Matsuda. Kenji had been one of the senior infrastructure leads, cold, sharp, painfully by the book. He was one of the first to stop talking to me when the pressure started. I'd hated him for that. But here he was, leaving a tiny breadcrumb, an old admin key, untouched since my suspension, reactivated quietly 2 weeks ago. It gave me access to a node no one else had used in months. Inside that node, logs, real ones, untampered, copies of the night of breach data, perfectly preserved. He'd saved them. For me, I didn't know. Maybe he couldn't speak out. Maybe this was his only way of helping. Would I ever forgive him for his silence? I wasn't sure. But right then, I was grateful. That night, I sat alone in my garage again, staring at the screen. The code pulsed gently, lines of logic mimicking chaos. I remembered my father, how he once tried to blow the whistle on a city contractor taking bribes. He lost his job, his pension, his health. We lived in a trailer for 3 years. He never talked about it again. I thought I could be smarter than him, that I'd know when to stop. Then my phone lit up with a news alert. New software patch to roll out across financial systems. Update scheduled in 72 hours. I froze. The update was built on the data Echo had just corrupted. If they deployed it as planned, it would crash half their operations. Echo wasn't designed to break things, but the new code would react based on Echo's false inputs, and they had no idea. I ran the simulations. Disaster. Transactions stuck. Overloads. Potential data loss. I called Cole. We have a problem. I thought that was the idea, he said. Not like this. I didn't mean for it to go this far. He was quiet. Then, "You started something, Ethan. You think you can pull out now?" But I didn't want to collapse. I wanted accountability. Still, the clock was ticking. 2 days later, my old company's rival, Cole's employer, launched a new product, one that conveniently addressed the very issues Echo had tricked the industry into fearing. It was leaner, cheaper, and promised transparency. Clients began migrating. That afternoon, a senior manager at my old firm leaked an internal message thread. Someone had flagged my name. "There's a leak," the email read, "and I think it's him." By evening, I got the call. Unknown number. I didn't pick up. 30 minutes later, the power to my home blinked out for exactly 7 seconds, just long enough to be a message. I checked my laptop's IP logs. Someone had pinged the Echo node, traced its pathway. Right back to me. I turned to Ava, asleep beside me on the couch, her little fingers wrapped around mine. I held her closer. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't angry. I was scared. What if this wasn't justice anymore? What if I'd just become the villain in someone else's story? By the time the countdown reached 0, the system had already begun to rot from the inside. The update launched at 2:00 a.m. sharp. By 2:07, the first reports rolled in. Failed verifications, frozen transaction queues, ghost balances. At 2:15, regional teams flagged discrepancies in audit logs that didn't align with actual ledger entries. By 3:00, internal comms were flooded with panic. Rollback not working. Customer data inaccessible. Payment gateways misfiring. It was a storm they didn't see coming, because the radar itself had been rigged. Echo had done its job. By noon, the media had caught wind of it. Screens across airports, waiting rooms, and phone notifications everywhere flashed the same headline: "Major financial firm suffers catastrophic data failure. Clients locked out nationwide." The CEO appeared on national television 6 hours later, clearly unprepared. His eyes scanned the teleprompter too often. His hands fidgeted. He tried to sound calm. Words like routine maintenance and temporary disruption were thrown around. But the mask slipped when a reporter asked about the rumored loss of millions in pending transactions. "We are working with our partners and clients to ensure a full recovery of all systems and a comprehensive investigation will be conducted," he stammered. But no one believed him anymore, because by then, someone had already leaked what the company had buried for years. The press received a 200-page dossier, internal memos, Slack transcripts, audit log exports, screenshots. The cover letter was simple: for the public, from someone who couldn't stay silent anymore. Anonymous. Inside that dossier were detailed timelines of every incident covered up by leadership, every security flaw swept under the rug, every whistle silenced, dates, names, tactics, and, on page 43, my name, not as a suspect, as a source. Ethan Ross, former lead security architect, raised red flags internally and attempted to escalate unresolved backdoor vulnerabilities. Documents indicate he was dismissed under false pretenses shortly thereafter. I stared at the screen, mouth dry. I hadn't sent the file. Cole hadn't either. Whoever did had access to everything we gathered. And more. I wasn't hiding anymore. But I wasn't safe either. That night, I got an email from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years, a former colleague from another firm. "Man," he wrote, "you just blew up the whole damn thing. They're calling you a digital Snowden." I didn't respond. Instead, I drove my mother to her doctor's appointment the next morning. Her arthritis had gotten worse, and she didn't like the new pills. We sat in the waiting room in silence, flipping through outdated magazines. Then she turned to me and said, "Whatever you're doing, just keep your heart clean. Don't let this make you into them." I looked at her and nodded, but I wasn't sure I could promise that anymore. Later that week, the ripple turned tidal. 2 other companies, both fintech startups that had white-labeled our firm's infrastructure, suffered similar failures. Their user data collapsed under the same corrupted inputs. Investors pulled out. Lawsuits piled in. One even filed for bankruptcy. It wasn't just a single collapse now. It was systemic failure. One morning, I opened a message from an old nemesis, someone who once tried to breach our systems years ago before we stopped him. He had always hated me for that. But now he wrote, "What you did saved me. I was about to get sucked back into a job I knew was compromised. You made people listen again. Thank you." I read it twice, then deleted it. Later that night, as I sat in the dark of my study, with Ava asleep in the next room, I watched the live coverage of the hearings. Congress had summoned multiple executives. One of them was Marcus, my old boss. He looked thinner, exhausted. He repeated phrases like unknown breach vector and coordinated cyber manipulation. No one said whistleblower, but everyone knew. The next morning, a letter arrived by courier. No sender. It was crisp, formal. "Mr. Ethan Ross, you are requested to appear for a closed session interview with federal oversight officials regarding recent security disclosures and infrastructure collapse events. Your cooperation is appreciated." No details on which agency, just a time, and a room number. I stared at it for a long time, not scared, not angry, just tired, and somewhere deep down, relieved. Because whatever was coming next, I wouldn't have to pretend anymore. The building didn't have a name, just a number on a steel plaque and windows that mirrored the sky so cleanly it looked like a lie. I was escorted through 2 security checkpoints, told to leave my phone in a locked drawer, and led down a hallway that smelled faintly of ozone and bleach. The man who greeted me wore no badge. He didn't offer a name, just motioned for me to sit. "We've been watching you, Mr. Ross," he said. I didn't reply. "Since before you were let go," he continued. "Since before Echo. Since before you even knew what Echo was going to become." He slid a file toward me. Inside were pages of my old code, photos of me at my desk, metadata from devices I hadn't used in years. They knew everything. "We don't care about the ethics," he said. "We care about the outcome. What you did destabilized critical infrastructure. You're lucky you're not in a holding cell right now." "So why am I here?" I asked. "Because you're still useful." He leaned back. "We need to clean up. Quietly. No press. No trials. Just stabilization. We want you to help us fix what broke, without anyone knowing how deep it ran. In return, we make everything disappear. No charges. No surveillance. You get your life back." "But I disappear too," I said. He nodded. "That's the price. You help us patch the wound, or the whole body dies." I left the building 2 hours later with a non-disclosure agreement burning a hole in my jacket and a decision weighing even heavier in my chest. That night, I sat in the living room, lights dimmed, my wife curled up beside me but not touching. She hadn't asked what the meeting was about, but I told her anyway. "They want me to help them fix it," I said, "but I have to vanish. No interviews, no acknowledgments, no justice, just silence." She didn't say anything at first. Then softly, "Would it keep us safe?" "I think so," I said. "At least from them." She looked at me, her eyes tired, but resolute. "Then maybe silence is better than losing everything." I nodded, but something inside me twisted. I had spent years protecting a system that chose to bury me. Now I was being asked to help rebuild it, on the condition that I let it bury the truth forever. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard a sound. Soft, precise, not clumsy like a thief, more deliberate. I rose without turning on the lights, reached under the bed for the small lockbox I kept. It was still there, untouched. But the back door was slightly ajar. Someone had been inside. They didn't take anything. That was the message. The next morning, I opened a cold terminal, bypassed my usual encryption protocols, and accessed the vault colon I had built. Every log, every message, every code line. And I did what I knew they feared most. I pushed it all to the blockchain. Immutable, irreversible, permanent. Then I created a single-page site. Black background, white letters. At the center, a pulsing symbol. Use undone. No name, no contact, just truth. By noon, the site had gone viral. By evening, journalists were picking through the code. Infographics flooded social media, tracing corruption from boardrooms to offshore accounts. Whistleblower forums lit up. Government response teams scrambled to verify sources, but the blockchain didn't care about bureaucracy. It was out. All of it. I watched the coverage from my kitchen, coffee gone cold in my hand. Then I saw him. Marcus, my old boss, on a live interview, trying to maintain his composure while the anchor read excerpts from the Lar Undone drop. He fumbled, denied, tried to shift blame. Then, barely perceptible, his face changed. His eyes widened just a fraction as he glanced at a new page handed to him by a producer. He swallowed hard. His voice cracked. He knew. This wasn't going away. I turned off the TV. I sat at my desk, opened a blank document, and typed 5 words. I am no one now. Then I deleted them. Later, as Ava slept across my chest, her breath soft and warm, I whispered to the dark, I don't need to exist. But the truth does. The company didn't collapse all at once. It unraveled like old thread, seams splitting one by one, under the weight of years they thought were buried. Executives resigned. Shareholders fled. Regulators descended like wolves in suits. Within weeks, the name vanished from buildings, then from search engines, and finally from memory. In its place, remnants were salvaged, code bases, platforms, some infrastructure. Parts of the old system were released as open source, spun with careful press releases about corporate transparency and community engagement. But anyone who knew the truth recognized it for what it was, a monument of ashes repackaged for resale. I wasn't there to see it fall. By then, I was already gone. 3 states away, I rented a quiet house near a river where the signal was weak and the nights were long. I taught at a local library. Basic coding, cybersecurity principles, how to spot scams and deepfakes. The students were mostly kids, teenagers hungry for something real in a world where everything felt synthetic. They called me Mr. R. I never told them my real name. I didn't miss the old life. Not really. One afternoon, after class, I found a letter slipped under the door. No envelope. Just a folded sheet of notebook paper. It read, "Thank you. My dad used to work for that company. They fired him after he tried to report a system error. Said it was his fault. We lost our home. After your story came out, they cleared his name. He cried. I've never seen him cry. I'm learning to code now, so maybe I can build something better. Love, Leah. I sat down on the floor, the letter trembling in my hands. In all the chaos, I'd never thought about who else might be watching. Who might be healing because of what I broke? What do you leave behind when you disappear? That question echoed in my mind for days, until one morning, while preparing for class, a man I'd never seen before walked in. Mid-50s, clean suit, weathered face. He didn't speak, just placed a small USB drive on my desk, nodded once, and left. I waited until the kids were gone, locked the door, slid the drive into an old laptop I never connected to the internet. It contained a single folder. Inside, there were files marked in languages I didn't recognize. Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, some just strings of symbols. Encrypted logs, snippets of surveillance footage, AI-generated signatures, and code, lines and lines of code. And somewhere in the middle, my code, modified, rewritten, repackaged, still mine. I scrolled, pulse quickening. The architecture was unmistakable. My early work on adaptive intrusion tracebacks, but now embedded into something far more complex. It wasn't being used for defense anymore. It was rerouted for control. The final file was a blueprint, a network diagram that spanned continents. At the center, no name, no logo, just one symbol, a mirror cracked down the center. Whoever gave me this knew exactly what it meant. I sat there for hours, staring at the screen. Ava had fallen asleep on the couch. Outside, the sky folded into itself, pink turning to navy. They were using my work. Not just the company, not just one corrupt board, something bigger. And now, they wanted me to know. Maybe as a warning, maybe as an invitation. But either way, I couldn't ignore it. I powered off the laptop, placed the USB in a tin box, and buried it under the floorboards. For now. That night, I opened a new document and started writing again. Not code, not manifestos, just thoughts. What happens when the people who break the world are the only ones allowed to fix it? And what happens when someone like me gets another chance to rewrite the rules? In the screen's reflection, I saw the flicker of code still etched in my pupils. The same logic I'd once used to hold a broken system together, now weaponized by something I didn't yet understand. I reached for the power button, paused, and whispered, "Once you've seen how the system truly works, you never go back to being normal." Then I turned the laptop on,